solution. So yeah, without further ado, please come up to Huston. Thank you. Give him a warm welcome.
It's all good, dude. People mix me and Sunil up all the time. How you guys doing? Good. So first, I want to thank Corey and the team here for putting this together. This is the closest I've ever gotten to a Major League Baseball field. It's maybe not exactly what I dreamed about as an 8-year-old, but I'll take what I can get. But I was thinking about all you guys this weekend, and thinking about the summer you're about to have. And my first thought was like, what the hell? I never had an Internpoloza. But my second thought was about all the internships I have and what formative experiences they were, and kind of the difference between what my life was like as a student and where it is now. And for sure, a lot of things are different. So I'm running Dropbox. It's a 1,700 person company. We've got all these offices all over the world. There's all these things that I got to do and think about. But when I rewind to when I was your age, or 20, 21, I looked a lot like you guys. And I grew up programming. I didn't know a lot about business. And I had to learn all of this on the fly. And so when I think about it now, in a lot of ways, the internships that I did in high school and college were the beginning of that journey. And I had a ton of fun with them, and I learned a lot. But there were a couple things that I wish I knew. And in short, the recipe for success in real life and in your internship is pretty different from what got you here, like the recipe for success in school. Because I felt like in school, all you gotta do, it's really just like this optimization of like, how can I put in the minimum amount of effort to get like the minimum adequate grade? But in real life, it's a little bit different. So when I thought about what should I talk to you guys about, the talk I want to give all of you is a talk that I wish someone had given me when I was starting my first internship. And I want to talk about 3 things. The first is washing dishes. The second is compound interest. And the third is planting seeds. So let's start with washing dishes. And what I mean by washing dishes is finding ways to take initiative and basically finding ways to be useful. When I was in college, I lived in a fraternity, Phi Delta Theta. There we go. And the 40 of us, there were like 40 of us in the house, and every night we'd have this like communal dinner together. And when you're done eating your food, it's a pretty simple protocol. You wash your dish off, you put it in the dishwasher, and if everybody does that, there'd be no mess. No problem, right? So I'm sure some of you live in a dorm or in a fraternity, and you know how hopeless this is. And maybe some of you like know these other people, or maybe some of you are these people, but the people that left the goddamn dishes behind would really piss me off. And so what would happen is everybody knew this was a problem, that there was always a mess after dinner. There were long emails about it, a lot of complaining, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of mailing list activity. I imagine this kind of thing still happens. And sure enough, we're at dinner one night, and then one of the solutions that one of our guys came up with is something that I still remember to this day. So there's a guy named Dylan. We were all eating dinner. We were kind of the late shift. And so we finish up, we grab our dishes, and we're walking past an empty table, and I'm like, God damn it, someone left a dish on the table. And I'm trying to think like who was sitting there, who was it? And I'm like drafting the angry email in my head. And then before I can finish my chain of thought, this guy Dylan, he's a couple people in front of me, he just grabs a dish, puts it on top of his plate, washes it, and leaves. And so at first I'm like, Dylan, like, hold on, like you don't have to do that. You didn't make the mess. You know, you're not on cleanup duty. This is totally unfair, blah, blah, blah. And then my second thought was like, wow, think of all the things he didn't do. He didn't complain. He didn't even call attention to it. He just grabbed it. He's just like, I care about this place enough to make it great, and I'm gonna find this problem, I'm gonna fix it. And that really stuck with me. My next thought was like, God, we need a lot more Dylans in this fraternity, and we need a lot more Dylans in the world. But what does this have to do with your internship? Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. Companies don't really know what to do with you. They don't really know what to do with their interns. Because you'd think like, oh, companies should just give like work to interns, but there's problems with that because you're like, well, maybe some of you don't have enough experience to do it, and the rest of you will be gone in a couple months, so who's going to maintain the stuff that you come up with? So what ends up happening is you get a lot of fake work in your internship, and maybe some of you experience this. You might think of this as a problem, but it's really an opportunity. Because when I look back at my internships, the most valuable things I did for those companies and the most valuable experiences for me had nothing to do with what I was originally assigned to do or what my job description actually entailed. I'll give you a couple examples. So my first internship, I worked as an engineering intern at a little company called Soft Servo Systems in Waltham, Mass. So they were like 20 minutes away from where I grew up. And this is actually a mechanical engineering company, so Soft Servo. It's not an ice cream company, just like a bunch of MIT guys. There's a bit of like a language barrier thing. But anyway, I don't even remember what I initially came to do, but I do remember there was always, every few weeks, there would be this big scramble because there would be these investors from Japan who would come and visit, and there were a lot of important things that would hinge on these meetings, like more fundraising, things like that. And so there'd be a lot of activity to get the demos ready and get going. And I realized that we had a problem, which is that our interface, like the actual UI, looked terrible. Like you would have to try to make it worse. But I was a little confused, so I like go and I talk to my boss, and I'm like, hey, you know, I don't even know if I asked permission or I just had a mock-up, but I was like, you know, this could look a lot better. I've got a couple ideas on how you can improve this, and I'd be happy to give it a shot. And what I expected him to say was like, thanks for saying that. That's not what I need you to be working on. Please have a seat. But instead, what he said was like, yeah, I know this has been driving me crazy. We don't have anybody who knows how to do this. I'd love it if you took a shot at it. And this happened again and again. And I was just shocked at how much responsibility that I would get once I'd identified that I could do things. And how much my job was really kind of me telling me what to do as much as it was my boss telling me what to do. And I carried that mindset through some other through the rest of my internships, and some of them were high visibility projects like that. Others were more basic, and I learned you can get a lot of points for doing things that are kind of unglamorous or that nobody else wants to do. And so, at a company called Bit9 in Cambridge, I found myself doing things that no one else really wanted to do, like jumping in on certain bugs or fixing the build system, a lot of things like that. And people loved it because it made a lot of the developers' lives easier, it made my boss's life easier. And so I learned from that the best thing you can do to get responsibility is just to take it. So my advice for you is you're going to find dishes everywhere at the company you're at now and the company you're at, in every company you're at in the future. And so one approach to this, which is what most people do, is they just wait for their boss to hand them a dish, right? And then they wash it. But what you can all use this summer for is to practice, is get really good at looking at all the dishes out there, look at the ones that no one seems to be washing, and look at the ones that are really important to your boss. And you'll find that you would be shocked at how much responsibility you can take on. But this means taking a lot more initiative than just waiting for directions. The second thing I want to talk about is compound interest. And you guys know how compound interest works in investing. What really matters is not how much your bank balance starts with, but the interest rate and time and so on. And it turns out this is a pretty useful way to think about your growth. And the interest rate in this case is not so much about money, but it's more about how much you're learning, how much you're growing. And so you should really care about that interest rate because time is actually on your side. You're beginning your careers, but the sooner you can start compounding quickly, the better it is for you. And so how do you do that? Well, one way is just to learn faster. And one way to do that is instead of waiting for other people to teach you stuff, just create opportunities for your own learning. And when I think about the project I did to fix the UI at Soft Servo, I had never really done that before. And so to do that, I had to learn about Windows programming, and then I had to learn about UI programming, I had to learn about Photoshop, I had to learn about design. I had to learn about all these things. And then the next project I did was I was going to move some stuff from Windows to Linux. And so I had to learn about operating systems and Linux and all these things 5 years before I ever took a class on it. And then in other companies, I learned a different set of things. So at Bit9, I learned there's a lot more to running a company than just the engineering. And I found that business people really like to talk, and particularly they like to talk about what they do, and they're actually pretty helpful in educating me. So at lunch at the startup at Bit9, we would all get together, and I would ask the business people, like, what's important to you? What do you think about in your job? Do you have any books you recommend? And the founder and CTO, this guy named Todd, said, hey, you should really read Innovator's Dilemma by Clay Christensen. You should really read Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. So he had all these suggestions that were like kind of this beginning of this education I had, where after that, when I wanted to learn about business, I'm like, oh my God, there's all these things I know nothing about. And what I ended up doing was going on Amazon and just typing in sales and typing in marketing and just like sort by like sales, and just bought the top couple books and for each subject. And then I ended up getting this like really amazing business education without having to go to business school. So you want to accelerate your learning as fast as possible. And the second thing you want to do, in addition to learning faster, is to push yourself. And so every couple of years, you're going to find there's a fork in the road, and you're going to be choosing between two pretty good options. And what you want to do is take the path that optimizes for learning. I'll give you an example. So I have a friend of mine named Aditya. And at 22 years old, Aditya was probably a lot like a lot of other 22-year-olds in his graduating class. So he studied computer science at Carnegie Mellon. And when he graduated, he took a job at Oracle. And life was pretty good. He was getting paid. His job was pretty comfortable. Until one day, he gets a phone call from one of his friends from school. He said, hey, dude, come out to California. I'm working for the startup. It's really awesome. You should check it out. We're hiring engineers. And so he goes out there. He goes to Palo Alto. He scopes it out. He's like, okay. He's a little conflicted. He's like, look, the people here seem really interesting. The work they're doing seems pretty fun. But this is also kind of a sketchy company. They don't even have an office. They're just like working out of some dude's living room. I don't even think this Facebook thing is really going to even work out. But he jumped in with both feet, and you can kind of imagine where this is going. Aditya became one of the first engineers at Facebook. And then Facebook started growing like crazy, so he got all this responsibility that he otherwise wouldn't have gotten or wouldn't have been ready for. And a couple years into his career, he's one of the first engineering directors at Facebook. And then, when we at Dropbox were looking for our first VP of engineering, we're like, we need someone who like really understands this like hyper growth, this chaos. And when we narrowed down the list, we're like, my God, there's only a few people in the world that have this on their resume, and they're kind of the right place in their career, have this experience. And Aditya was one of them. And so Aditya became our VP of engineering. Fast forward a few years, he's our CTO. He's still with the company. But the point being, like at 22, he looked a lot like the other 22-year-olds in his graduating class. And because of a couple decisions, his life and his resume at 34, 35, and even before that looks super different. And so you want to pick these opportunities really carefully. And I had experiences like this. So one of the companies I was consulting for, or kind of an intern for, they wanted me to take, at the end of the summer, they're like, hey, would you mind taking a year off from school? Because we really need you. We want you to hire all these people. We want you to do all this stuff. And it was intriguing, because I'm like, okay, I've never done these things before. I'm sort of lucky that they're willing to give me a shot at this. But this is like super inconvenient, right? I'm trying to finish my degree at MIT. My parents are super pissed off that I would consider leaving. Like there's all these problems. But I was like, you know what? Okay, I feel like I'm gonna learn more. I can finish my degree later. I'm really glad I did that, because I had no idea where this was gonna go. And in fact, during that year off, I not only worked for that company, but then I also started my first company and all these other things. But these forks in the road show up at these kind of random times, and Dropbox was like that too. Because I was running my first company, I was working at Bit9 as an engineer, all these things. But I just had this feeling that this would be this really exciting thing to work on, and I didn't really know where the road was going to go, but I had a feeling it would end up somewhere good. And so when you like add that up, it's like learn faster and push yourself. It sounds so obvious, right? Like you would think everybody would do this, so why don't they? And it's because it's like super uncomfortable, right? Think of what Aditya's, now Aditya can look back and be like, yeah, of course I joined Facebook as employee number 9, all these things, but back then it was like, wait, you would leave Oracle, you'd leave the safe job, the equivalent to like a safe job at Google today or whatever, and you would work for this sketchy startup. And my parents were not like, oh, we're so excited for this learning opportunity. They're like, why the hell would you leave your leave school and risk not coming back? All these things. So your instinct when these forks in the road come along will be to run away from. You're going to feel uncomfortable, right? And your instinct is to be, I want to run away from that discomfort. And instead, what you want to learn to do is run towards it. And I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I hadn't done that with Dropbox and a bunch of other places. The third thing I want to talk about is planting seeds, and really planting seeds, planting relationship seeds. So what does that mean? So in school, they would tell me like, hey, it's really important that you understand networking, and not like computer networking, like people networking. And it's just always, I never really understood that, because I'm like, this just sounds like annoying and kind of intimidating and uncomfortable. And then later on, I realized like, oh my God, all these people in school or at events like this, like you keep running into them. And this keeps happening over and over and over again, and your paths cross in ways that you wouldn't expect. So one guy, I met a guy named Kyle at the MIT Entrepreneurs Club, or Entrepreneurship Club. And he was working on something pretty cool. He was working on some streaming video stuff. But what I didn't know at the time was he was floor mates with my future co-founder at Dropbox. And we just happened to randomly stay in touch. And when it came time for me to find a co-founder, I just shot Kyle a note and I was like, hey, do you know anyone that would be good? And he referred me to Arash. And that's, I still think about that. I'm like, man, what would have happened if I hadn't gone to that Entrepreneurs Club meeting? And you can never really know how these things are going to cross in the future, but they will. And and that guy Aditya, the first time I met him was at some house party a couple months after I moved to San Francisco. It was like many years before we ended up working together. And I was just like, oh, this guy seems cool, he's doing interesting things. And then when it came time for us to look for a head of engineering, I was like, oh, well, I think Aditya would be awesome. And so you never know how these connections will come around. And the second thing is, if you do a good job at work, then people will want to help you. And so what I didn't realize about my first startup, or about Soft Servo where I was working, was that the founder and the president was actually a professor at MIT. And so when it came time for me to apply to college and apply to MIT, having a faculty recommendation was a pretty helpful thing. And there are tons of stories like that. And then at Bit9, getting to know the founder and CTO, Todd, he not only recommended books to read, but then he introduced me to investors when it came time for me to start Dropbox. He supported me in making that transition. He told me a lot of different things about how to raise money, about business. He ended up investing. And I think about all the people we hired at Dropbox, a lot of them were our friends from school and just people that we met and things like this. So my advice is stay in touch with the people you meet here and the people you meet in your internship, because you're going to see them again. And plant these seeds and take care of them, because you never know what's going to sprout or when. So those are the 3 things I think you guys should think about as you start your internships, as you start real life. Because it wasn't until much later that I realized how much a turning point this is. It certainly was for me, and it is for all of you. Because there's a couple big differences between school and your internship in real life. And this is the turning point where, one, you, for your whole life, you've basically been following a course that other people have set for you, right? Success means just like following directions and doing what's expected of you. And now, if you want to do big things, you got to chart your own course. And there's a lot of fun parts of that, but there's a lot of uncomfortable parts of that too. But I also think that all of the best things that happened in my life and my career were also the most uncomfortable. So again, you got to run into that feeling. And second, in real life, you don't have a GPA. And just think about the concept of a GPA. A GPA is basically like the sum of all the mistakes you've ever made in school. Right? So everything is on your permanent record. But in real life, it's pretty different, right? Every single successful entrepreneur I know has had a ton of failures. But no one has a batting average. Nobody keeps track of that. It doesn't matter you've had 1,000 strikeouts. All people remember is the one home run. So I don't know any people successful people whose careers have gone in a straight line. So what all you should do is explore and color outside the lines a little bit. And think of your life as more of an adventure or a story, not just like a resume or a bunch of checkboxes. And if you do that, I'm convinced that one of you guys, 10, 15 years from now, will be up here or will be at the top of whatever mountain it is that you choose to climb. So thanks, have a great summer, and good luck.
Thank you, Drew.